Guys, we need to talk about something. But before I get into that, keep in mind that there are going to be different policies and laws based on where you're located, whether you are in the United States or if you're not in the United States. Different states and countries have different laws about what we're talking about today, which is ADHD medication. I know that there are different kinds of ADHD medication, but for the purposes of this video, it's mostly relevant for stimulant medications. That's going to include things like Adderall, Concerta, Ritalin, any other kind of like methylphenidate generic, Vyvanse, lisdexamfetamine, amphetamine generic. Actually, I have a short where I list through all of the stimulant medications. We're not just talking about medication. We're talking specifically about the process by which someone with ADHD has to go get their prescription refilled. So let's start with the basics. It has been shown by multiple studies, I double checked before I made this, that ADHD medications, specifically stimulants, are like the golden standard for treating ADHD in adults. Let me say that again. ADHD medication, namely stimulant medications, are the best way to manage your ADHD symptoms and treat your ADHD symptoms if you are an adult with ADHD. Okay, so we have that. We're all clear on that. No questions. Before I get into the exact details of how I go about ordering a new prescription, getting a refill, let me also cover a couple more things. So the people that set the quotas, that means the people that say, here's how much medication that we're going to make every year. Here's how many we're going to allow be made in our country and be distributed in our country. That's decided by the DEA, or the Drug Enforcement Administration. I think that's what it stands for. So the DEA controls the quotas of like how much Adderall, for example, is going to be made in a given quarter or year. And then the DEA is also the one that labeled Adderall and other stimulant medications as a class 2 controlled substance. Now, controlled substances are things that you definitely don't want like to be over the counter or easily pick upable by just any Joe Schmo on the street. They are controlled for a reason. So for example, Adderall is a class 2 controlled substance because of its addiction and abuse potential, which is valid, fair. The way that it works with your brain, which by the way, if you're not sure how ADHD medication works and you're curious, I do have a whole video on that. Go check that out if you want to know more about like the science behind ADHD medication and how it works. It makes sense that Adderall and other stimulants are on this class 2 list. So that's fine and dandy. But the problem with that is, like I said, it makes it a little more complicated for people to pick it up. So those are our two main points, the DEA and the quota and the difficulty of picking up. There's got to be a better way to say that. There's that component, and then there's the ADHD medication is the best treatment for adults with ADHD. Okay, story time. Let's say that I need a refill for my inhaler for asthma. So let's say you call and you say, hey, I have like 3 puffs left of my albuterol inhaler. Can I please get a refill? They would send the note back to your doctor, and then your doctor would send maybe 1, but with stuff like albuterol, they're probably going to send 2, 3, 4, maybe up to 6 months. I don't know what the policy is on inhalers, but with stuff like that, or even like antidepressants, for example, I also take sertraline or Zoloft. With either of those things, I would call up, say, hey, can I get a refill? They'd be like, sure thing, homie. And then they would send it to my pharmacy, and it wouldn't just be one prescription. It would be like, one that I could pick up that day. But then they would also send like, hey, to Walgreens, they would say, when she needs another inhaler, she has 3 more refills of this or whatever. I only need to call my doctor for my inhalers like every 4 inhalers that I use, if that makes sense. The way that it's different with ADHD medication is that the doctor, at least where I live, cannot send the pharmacy more than 1 prescription refill at a time. That means you have to call the doctor's office every 30 days to get your prescription refilled. So I've been taking ADHD medication for about 5 or 6 years, something like that. Every month, I have to call in, be put on hold for 5 to 20 minutes, depending on how busy they were. How can I help you? And I'd be like, hey, this is Sydney. I need a refill for my medication. They're like, which one? I'm like, both of the Adderall ones. I take XR and IR. I'll get to that later. They'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll send it back. And then they would send it back to my doctor. My doctor would do the thing to send it to my pharmacy, which is Walgreens. And then Walgreens would send me a text and say, hey, we have your prescription ready. Why don't you come pick it up? And I'd be like, sweet. That's best case scenario, and I can tell you that's probably happened maybe once or twice in the 6 years that I've taken ADHD medication. Let me tell you what usually happens. So you only get 30 pills in your thingy. Where I live, you cannot pick up another refill of this medication unless it's been, I think, 28 days, but it might be 30 days, between 28 and 30 days. So if I order something on January 1st, or if I pick up my medication on January 1st, I cannot pick up a refill until like January 31st. Math. So to put that into more of a tangible thing, if I call my doctor, let's say it's January 30th. I'm taking my last pill today. It's a Friday morning. I have my coffee. I'm like, oh, there's one pill left. Let me take this and then let me call my doctor because I need a refill. So I would call, be put on hold again. Hey, what do you need? Hey, this is Sydney. I need some more stuff for my brain. Oh, okay, cool. I'll send that back to your doctor. Here's the problem with that is it's more likely that I'm going to take my medication in the morning with my coffee and be like, oh shit, I need to call my doctor. And then I forget for a couple hours. And then I remember around lunchtime and I call and they're on lunch break. So then the waiting, I'm on hold for like 25 minutes. Then when they finally answer, I'm like, oh, hey, can I get my meds? This is my last day. They're like, sure thing. They send it back to the doctor, but she left early today or she's sick today, so she can't fill my prescription. And remember, it's Friday. So what happens? Tomorrow is day 1 without medication. Saturday. They're not open on Saturday. Sunday is day 2 without medication. Monday morning is day 3 without medication. Now, hopefully my doctor is over her sickness or back from vacation or whatever she was doing, and she sees my request. Let's say she sends it over to Walgreens at 3. Walgreens will send me a text around 4. We got your prescription refill request. And then that's when I'm like, oh, great, cool, I'm gonna go pick it up. But then I keep reading. Unfortunately, this prescription is delayed because we're out of stock. Now, this was the problem when there was that massive shortage of medication last year, and everyone all over was experiencing this, where they would try to, call their pharmacy and they would be like, hey, can I get my medication? They're like, actually, we're out. So then what would happen is you have to call around to other pharmacies. And can we just take a second to appreciate the fact that ADHD medication is very stigmatized? A lot of people will say it's basically meth. It's not. Or basically speed. It's not. Yes, we've talked about the addictive qualities of it, but we've also talked about how it's like the most effective treatment for ADHD. We tend to internalize that societal stigmatization of ADHD medication, and we kind of feel ashamed about it. At least a lot of us do, and I personally do. I deal with this. So like when I go to get my medication at the pharmacy, I'm like, oh God, they're gonna know what I'm getting my medication. I don't know if anybody else is like this in the security line at airports. I'm gonna be like, oh my God, what if they find a knife in my bag? And wait, I don't have a knife. But what if they find one? I feel guilty even though I shouldn't. So that's kind of how I feel when I go to the pharmacy. Now imagine how that feels like when you feel that way about getting your medication. Having to go to like new pharmacies or call around and be like, hey, do you have this medication? And then finally, they say, maybe you call a pharmacy in the next town over and they're like, actually, yeah, we do have a bottle of that. Oh, so I can just come pick it up. And then the pharmacy would be like, actually, no, you're going to have to call your doctor. So at this point, it's like 4:30 if I'm on my shit, which I'm usually not. But let's pretend I am. So at this point, it's like 4:30 p.m. My doctor's out of the office again because they leave at 4. So I can't even call now. So I have to remember to call in the morning. So what are we on? Day 5 now without medication, I think. Next morning, day 6 without medication. I call my doctor and say, hey, this other pharmacy has the prescription that I need because my normal pharmacy is out of the prescription. Could you please send it to this one? And she's like, oh, yeah, sure. So then that takes, however long it takes. And then I go pick up my prescription. Okay, so we did it. Okay, that's good. We're done. Except now you have to do it again in 30 days. Here's where it gets really tricky. I take, like a lot of people with ADHD, 2 types of stimulants. I take an extended release, XR or ER, and I take an immediate release, IR. I take the extended release in the morning, and then around the afternoon time, on the day that I need it, I'll take my IR. So they used to be on sync, right? I used to go to the pharmacy and pick them up on the same day. I would request them from my doctor for the same day. On the same day, she would send them in on the same day. I would pick them up in the pharmacy on the same day. They would renew on the same day 30 days from now. When there was a shortage last year, I could only pick up one of them. So let's say it was, I don't remember, but it was like I could pick up IR, but XR was out of stock. So I requested both of them, sent it to my doctor, said, hey, can I have my medications? She's like, sure thing. Sends both to the pharmacy. Pharmacy's like, yo, we're out of stock for these, but we'll give you these other ones. I have my IR. My XR doesn't come in for another week. So now, as you can imagine, maybe I'll make like a graphic or something to make this easier to follow, or maybe not. Who knows? If you can imagine like a calendar, if you pick up on day 1, you pick up the IR, but let's say on like day 8, that's when you pick up the XR. Okay, so 30 days from day 1, that's when you can pick up the IR again, but now you have to do 30 days from day 8 to pick up the XR again. And that's if it's on pace next month, which it's not, because we're in a shortage, remember? So the next time you go in, they're out of the IR, but they have the XR, but not the right dosage. But let's say that you take 20 milligrams and they're like, actually, we're out of 20 milligram XR and we're completely out of IR, but we do have a bunch of 10 milligram XR. We could just give you 2 of those bottles. Thank God, by the way, that I have pharmacists who don't come off as judgy, because this would make us a lot harder. Like I said, with the whole stigmatization thing, the pharmacists like at the Walgreens here in town are actually pretty cool. And they answer all my annoying questions. But anyway, let's say that they have 10 milligrams of the XR. I'll be like, oh, okay, can I get 2 of those then? So it, is basically like me taking 20 milligrams. And guess what? No, you're gonna have to call your doctor. So we all know how this part goes. And then, not to mention, sometimes I don't even understand this part of it. I used to take brand name Adderall. On the thing, it would say Adderall, and it would have like Teva, that's the pharmaceutical company that made it. But now it's like D-amphetamine, ER, salt combo, CP. Oh yeah, and okay, so I really don't like this kind. It's probably why my stomach's been hurting, because I picked these up yesterday. So this one's from instead of Teva. So like when you see the name underneath the name of the prescription, it's like smaller. It's like above the take 1 capsule and then below the name of the prescription. That text right there is the manufacturing name. And there have been studies, although I haven't looked into them, but I don't know why I shook this while I was talking. There have been studies that the different generics do have different effects in people. For me, personally, this has a weird like aftertaste, and I've been like super nauseous the past 2 days. What was I talking about right before this? Oh yeah, so sometimes like my insurance will just like decide that it doesn't want to cover a certain type anymore. So like I used to take regular brand name Adderall, but now I take this bullshit. It's probably cheaper to make it, yet it's somehow more expensive of a copay. Like, make that make sense. Before it was like $7 for the Adderall, and then now it's like $12 for the generic stuff. So that's beside the point. I just went on a whole rant about that. Do you see my issue? Do you see why it doesn't make any sense to make the prescription renewal the way that it is? Like, this system is very faulted. I'm not asking for the DEA to remove the class controlled substance thingy from Adderall and just like let us all have it. I'm just asking maybe make it so that my doctor can send more than one prescription to the pharmacy. So then that way she could send like maybe 3 months, would be even better than 1. She could send 3 months worth of pills or a prescription to the pharmacy. And then that way, the pharmacy, just like with the inhaler example I gave earlier, they can say, hey, you can come pick this one up now, and then we'll let you know when you can pick the other ones up. It'll be in the system. It can set up an automation that sends it to my phone, like, hey, your prescription's ready. Then for 2 more months, I don't have to worry about calling my doctor, or, like I said, a lot of places have apps now. Definitely check if your place has an app. It's a lot easier to just scroll down and click medication renew. You save a lot of time not sitting on hold and talking on the phone, because we all know how much people with ADHD love talking on the phone. That was sarcasm. That would just save a lot of time, a lot of stress, because what happens is I'm not ordering my medication on day 29. If day 29 is on a Friday, I don't know if she's going to see it, so I want to order it on like that Monday or Tuesday, so she has all week to see it and then submit it to the pharmacy, and then who knows if it's even going to be in stock at the pharmacy, right? I'm like ordering it on day 24 or 25 of taking my medication, and that changes every month depending on the availability of my meds. So like right now, my issue is that I just picked up my XR yesterday. I'm like pretty much out of IR right now, and I can't get another refill until I think the 10th, and today's the 2nd. So basically it's a shit show, and I should not be this stressed out about getting a prescription renewed for something that is so manageable. Well, not so manageable, I shouldn't say that. Something that can be managed, but I am struggling because the cognitive skills that it requires to be able to do all of this systematically and in an organized way and have it timed right and have the patience and all that, those are the exact cognitive skills that my medication helps me with. So make it make sense that I have to jump through flaming hoops off of skyscrapers to get a medication refill, but I don't even have the means to even get up to the top of the building to jump off through the flaming hoops. That was like, I was very committed to that metaphor and it kind of went nowhere. All right, let me try this again. That's like saying, oh, you need another inhaler? The inhaler refill floor is on the 20th floor. There's no elevator, and you're not allowed to start walking up the stairs until your inhaler is completely empty. Just so we know that you're not like, oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Another thing that could delay it is where I live, either once or twice a year, I have to go into my doctor's office to take a urine test. And I used to think that this was to make sure that I wasn't abusing my medication, because that's what the whole issue is, right? With the DEA, like abuse, addiction, I thought that's why I had to take a pee test. No. My doctor actually told me that they are checking to make sure I'm actually taking it because they want to make sure that I'm not selling it. So not only are we, afraid to call around because we don't want to be labeled as drug seeking, we are actually getting screened for being a criminal, kind of, in a way. So that could be another thing that delays me getting another prescription. It could get halted at my doctor's office and she won't send it to the pharmacy, and instead she'll just be like, actually, you need to make an appointment so we can check your pee to make sure that you're not selling your medication. And I'll be like, okay, cool. Can I come in tomorrow? And they'll be like, actually, we're booked for another 3 weeks. So, there's that too. Medication helps with executive functioning. It helps with time management. It helps me to not procrastinate. It helps me focus. It helps with organizational skills. It really helps with emotional regulation for me. Tell me why it feels so impossible to get a refill without really pushing my limits. So that's my rant. I've been researching how to kind of get this reassessed by someone, government policy-wise. I'm going to look into doing a petition and looking into my specific state laws and seeing who I need to talk to. But be on the lookout for a petition about, improving the accessibility of ADHD medication for adults with ADHD that are being treated by stimulants, because this is getting out of hand, y'all. I don't know if anybody else feels as strongly about this as me. If you do, please introduce yourself in the comments, because this feels like such a lone fight sometimes. And, I have the sympathy of like my partner, and I tried to explain it to my son the other day with like, okay, imagine you have these gloves in Fortnite and they bring your health up all the way, but you can only renew them every 30 days. And like, he got it, and I have their sympathy and stuff. But like I said, ADHD medication is still very stigmatized, so it's kind of difficult to talk about with anybody really, unless they understand what me or they understand the actual situation because they've dealt with it too. So I think that was everything that I wanted to cover. If you know anything about getting a petition rolling for something like this, what policies I should be looking at, which branch of government I should be looking at. Like I said, I don't want the DEA to like remove the class 2 thing. It would be nice if they had a higher quota, then we wouldn't have to deal with shortage stuff. They like purposely made a lower quota even though more adults are being diagnosed with ADHD and getting treatment for it, but that's beside the point. I don't want them to change anything about that. I just want a local, state, regional, whatever level between me, my doctor, and my pharmacy. Make it make more sense for people with ADHD, because it doesn't right now. And okay, rant over. Stay weird, I guess.